We're now heading southwards on Stock Road. Notice that it's dual lane in each direction, and it's taking us, it transfers from Stock Road right now to Rockingham Road. And we're going through the suburb of Wattleup. Wattleup is the blue area on the map that I gave you earlier on. And there's quite a story to be told in here. Basically, it's undeveloped as far as industry goes, industrial uses go. And so it presents amazing opportunity for future industrial land. This dual carriageway goes all the way to Rockingham, and we've been right at the end of it at the beginning of this tour. So it's very long. It's got the right growth characteristics to be able to accommodate a lot more traffic. And as we travel south on Rockingham Road, you'll see in the distance the great big huge blue and white shed for Civmec that we saw before, and it's over here. These trees you see here on the right, that's the Belia Regional Park. So you can see that that's actually quite extensive. Now, as we come over the crest of the hill, I want you to start looking at the characteristics of the land that you see. And bear in mind, once you get about another 600 or 800 metres along, it used to be houses. It was the township of Wattleup. And the government of the day created legislation to begin a process to ultimately have this land zoned for industry. And nothing has happened since, except that the houses were compulsorily acquired and raised, flattened. So when we look over here to the left, look at the contours. Look how the land slopes up to the east. Look at the different building platforms. So there's been a lot of earthworks go on. It's all at different levels. Different uses. Here we've got caravan and boat storage. And then we go around and there's pretty much nothing from about here on. Imagine that this land is going to be the next expansion of the heavy industrial core, which, remember, I said was built out, pretty much built out. There's not much, if any, there's no large lots left in the industrial core, but all of this area through here could be transformed into that industrial land. It's going to take a fair bit of work though, and lateral thinking. And what I mean by this is that, okay, Rockingham Road, if we make this at level 0, we're going to go up to the east. If this is level 0, you'll see ahead of us is a ridge, and along that ridge is a railway line. It's the railway line that takes the container trade or rail freight from Kwinana to Fremantle, or vice versa. If we build the Ankertel Road as the freight route, and it has the railway line through the middle of it, or a freight corridor for rail through the middle of it, then this railway line would be obsolete. So we're now almost 15 metres. I'm just going to park on the side of the road here and talk about what might happen here. But we're 15 metres above Rockingham Road. Most people, when they do an industrial or any subdivision, they will cut to fill, which means any extra fill material they put in the holes, or any extra. So they do the cut to fill so that it's flat. So you don't import material and you don't export material. That's what most people would think would happen here. What we need to do is think differently. If the railway lines only has a limited future, why don't we, and Perth is running out of fill material, so that's sand and limestone, crushed limestone and limestone rock. So we're sitting on 15 metres of quarryable, vertically 15 metres of quarryable resource. And it would be a crime to use that as cut to fill to make an industrial subdivision. What I say is that we should start at the southern portion of that blue on your map, the southern portion, and use that as a quarrying face at 0 level, same as the Rockingham Road, and start quarrying northwards all the way through here over 20 years. This ridge is 15 metres above Rockingham Road. The next ridge is 30, or just about 30 metres above Rockingham Road. So how does all that work? Well, it's really complex. This side of the railway line, all of the land is owned by the state government when the houses were bought and raised. The other side of the railway line is private holding, so they're in 2 to 5 hectare lot sizes. So whoever takes this on has to have the financial grunt to be able to acquire or do JVs with those existing landowners. And there's wonderful opportunities for those landowners to do really well out of this quarrying exercise, because remember, there's royalties. So royalties would go to the state government, just like mining royalties would. The property, the industrial property developer sells the fill material, and as the quarry face moves northwards, the land that's left over is ready to market heavy industrial land, serviced. Now, if we look around at this point, what do we see? What are the land uses? Well, there's containers stored over there. I can see some containers stored over there. I know there's lots of quarries, but it gets worse. I'll just let this truck go past and we'll follow it up to the next ridge. But have a look around as we go. Looking to the right, I can see container storage. I can see rubble being recycled. Looking to the left, I can see a market garden. This used to be market gardening all the way through. Now, on our right is a little vineyard and a very traditional Italian house. The old guy that lives in there uses these grapes for his grappa. And he said he'd give me a cutting or two at some stage, which will be quite good. Now, again, keep looking at what's around, left and right. Now we've got truck storage on a platform. Where are the environmental controls if there's a diesel spill? There aren't any. If this was permanent, and here's some isotainer storage, which is the dangerous chemicals. It's all higgledy-piggledy, all over the place. To my right is a quarry. The floor of that quarry is 15 metres above Rockingham Road, and as we approach this ridge, remember I said we're 30 metres, here's some more truck storage. It's just diabolical. But what this doesn't say to me it's a problem. This says it's a fabulous opportunity. So if you are an industrial property developer with a big long-term project in mind, this is it. We will just pull over again after we get out of the way of this truck. Now, just before we move out of here, I want you to take a look to the left at this building. The structure of it is actually literally sea containers with a roof on it, and they've cut window holes in it. I don't know what the town planning behind that is. I don't know what it's for, but I've started calling it Lego Land for what it's worth. Okay, so we're travelling east towards the Kwinana Freeway. It's a fair way off yet, say 4 kilometres. This land is all still part of the buffer zone. Now, there are residential property developers who would love to get their hands on this land a little bit further east of here. And Kwinana Industries Council, for the last 9 years of my time in this job, I have been fighting to resist that. But they're a very strong lobbying group, and they take a lot of work to resist. So we're going to move now to head south. When we're looking south, you can see the residue storage, the orange area. That's Alcoa's residue storage area, and that's important. That's the red on the map that I gave you. Now, this land right across to the Kwinana Freeway, which is probably 3 kilometres, maybe, yeah, 3 kilometres, maybe a bit less. is in the sights of 2 property developers for residential development. I've seen the plans which show houses right up to here. It's very constrained land. Now on this side on the left is a beautiful wetland, and if you look carefully you'll see a little man in a boat fishing. Well, if you think that's what it is, you've been caught. It's actually a mannequin that's fishing there. Somebody's got a good sense of humour. I swear I didn't put it there myself. So we've got a little bit of horticultural use through here. As we get further in, you'll see some market gardens. Now, I want you to think about this area. We've just come off the east-west road, which would be Rowley Road, which would be a freight link, linking Rockingham Road with the Kwinana Freeway. Kwinana Freeway is just over that ridge. Ahead of us, a couple of kilometres, will be the southern boundary of this area, Ankertel Road, a major freight route. We've got the freeway, Kwinana Freeway on that side. Overhead, we've got massive pylons, electricity pylons, transmission lines. You can't build under that, and who'd want to live near it anyway? And then immediately on our right is the Alcoa residue storage area, the toe of the residue storage area. So it is a really constrained piece of ground. But there's 2 residential property developers that want to turn this into housing, and I reckon they've got rocks in their head. The Department of Health says, as a requirement, if this happens, that any residential titles created here shall have a notification on them which says to be aware of the health or amenity impacts of industrial dust. So they're flagging their concerns, yet these property developers seem to be getting a really good run at it. Now there's a statutory process in place to determine what this area should be used for, and I'm hoping that it'll be a transparent process. It seems like it's heading down that path, but I know how influential these property developers can be. Having said that, if this land, because if we get the new port, well, we know we're going to at some stage, and we're going to get industrial development through Latitude 32. So, and Lithium Valley is rapidly taking off in the industrial area. It's going to need more room, like the core needs more room. This area through here could be levelled off, quarried, etc., and transformed into a new industrial area. And for those people from Perth, like Canning Vale. So Canning Vale is a mixed-use light industrial area, primarily set up to service the port. So that's container storage, truck maintenance, marshalling, you name it, that sort of thing. All of that could happen through here. And these residents on my right who think that their best option is for the property developers to get urban zoning on this land would, in my view, do far better to get together and jointly fund a study, a planning approval process to have their land zoned for light or special industry. And what that would mean for them is that they would, in all likeliness, achieve a much, much better property value. One of the laws of property ownership and investing is the person who holds the title when the value of the land is lifted makes a paper profit, crystallised when the land is sold. So they would be far better sitting on light or special industrial land today rather than the rural zoning that they have. But you know, that's their call, and I'll be putting that perspective through that statutory planning process. Now we're on Ankertel Road here. Ankertel Road will be, as I said before, the major freight route into and out of the port and join about 10 kilometres to the east to Tonkin Highway. Imagine this road as 2 lanes going west, and further over there 2 lanes going east, with a corridor for 2-way rail down the middle. And this would be like the freight freeway into the new port. So Westport have recognised this in their planning, the planners for the port. They've recognised this, and I believe the statutory planners, the land use planners in the Department for Planning, are now getting planning controls in place to preserve the reservation of this road, this critically important road. So we're getting closer and closer to the heavy industrial core now. The Alcoa residue storage area up to our right is still building that residue storage area up higher. It goes to, I think, 65 metres in height, but there's room for the corridor through here. This is already quite a busy industrial road, but the way that it needs to be set up through the Westport process and the freeway style that I talked about will enable trucks from the port to get their load, to travel eastwards to the Tonkin Highway, and then without hitting a traffic light at all, going right through to Kewdale, no traffic lights. All of the roads intersections are grade separated, so one over, one under. This is so critical for Perth's future transport needs that it has just got to happen. So, having harped on that point a fair bit, what we're going to do now is head north again, a little bit north again at this roundabout, and traverse up to the Hope Valley industrial area. The Hope Valley industrial area is part of the third symbiosis type that I talked about. Now, this land to our left is in private ownership. It's owned rural. 18 months ago, maybe 2 years, on one of these tours, I conducted it for an international company, large, that was wanting to produce lithium battery cells. They really liked the look of this block. They needed about 60 hectares. I think this is 65 hectares. And it was not zoned industry then, and it's still not zoned industry. But it was going to take too long, and the structure planning hadn't been adequately done. So they went away. They built their battery cell manufacturing plant somewhere in Malaysia, I believe. We lost that opportunity, but we don't want to lose another opportunity. When I spoke about the quarrying, so if you look at your map on the southern end of the blue, that's where we are now. So the quarrying would start here, and it would go all the way north to the other, that road that we drove up and we stopped at where the railway line was, quarrying all the way north, leaving heavy industrial land ready to market in its wake. So in this area, it's pocked with a lot of old quarries, and it's not. If you look at it from the area, you Google Earth it or whatever, you'll see that there's a lot of old quarries near. Yes, there's some quite nice environmental areas, and we're just about to pass through a wetland called Long Swamp. It's not in particularly good condition, but it could come back, and it doesn't need to be removed. It should be enhanced. And as this industrial area develops, it could be enhanced as part of the development conditions. Now we go around Long Swamp. We're going to come into an industrial estate called Flinders Estate. It's up to our left at the moment. It's on a hill, and that hill used to be the Hope Valley Township site. The township, at the same time as the Wattleup Township, was bought out, compulsorily acquired, bought out by the state government and raised for industrial development, remembering that these communities were living too close to industry. Now, I'm going to, before we go up into the Flinders Estate, which is up to our left now, I'm going to go into the Hope Valley industrial area. Just quickly, you see, directly ahead of us is a big green shed, huge shed. There's several of those. Remember I talked about the kit the construction kit for Tianqi Lithium, that's where it was built, principally out of that shed and transported all the way to its site in the industrial core. There's 3 of those sheds there. They're actually making Pacific Navy boats at the moment. And the other big green sheds up here are the Pacific Industrial. Also a lot of big plants made from there, and you can see a large number of big, huge white storage tanks. They are fabricated in these sheds here, and we're just going to turn around and get ourselves out of this industrial area. So there's quite a lot of advanced fabrication and manufacturing going on in here, as well as advanced engineering. So the specialist engineering workshops that service the complex plant and equipment in the industrial area, many of them are located here. There's galvanizers. Further up here there's all type engineering, which is very advanced plant maintenance engineering. So there's all type up there. So we'll move out of here. Look, this area is very traditional, and then we're going to head up to the Flinders Industrial Estate, which you can see up on the hill there here. So why am I harping on about it being a hill, you might ask? Well, the answer will come. Be patient. But I'd like you to note, to have a think about what you notice about a subdivision on a hill. What is the issues? What are the issues? Well, the first issue is that there's retaining walls, and some of them are quite extensive. And if we have retaining walls, that means the site costs are much higher. It means that trucks with containers and high wide loads, or forklifts with balanced loads, or cranes, it's not ideal. It's less than 100% safe. It's challenging loading trucks and cranes working on hills. It didn't need to be on a hill, but there's a reason that it is. And it's the reason that I go to great pains to explain on every single tour that I do. Now, some may dislike this. Too bad. So the reason the subdivision's on a hill is because there was about 20 years ago, when the township was here, the then Department of Fire and Emergency Services built a fire station. And that fire station is still here today. It served the Hope Valley and Wattleup area and the industrial area in Kwinana. No problem with that. But the problem is that government departments not talking to each other. So we have a brand new fire station in an area that the state government's industrial land agency is going to build a industrial subdivision on. So there's the fire station, and because they weren't talking to each other, it was too embarrassing, didn't want to acknowledge that the fire station was built without the knowledge of the land developer, and vice versa. It was agreed the fire station would stay and the subdivision would be built on the existing terrain, the hill. So that's why, to this day, this subdivision has lots of retaining walls and has been very slow because it's expensive. But worse still, we're driving on probably, 14 meters vertical height of land resource that should have been quarried and sold. Probably would have paid for the subdivision, but no. Let's keep it under the surface. We'll just build this and cop it sweet. So I tell everyone, including ministers of the state, and it's a true story. Now look at the size of this retaining wall, and look at the driveway. We've got some fire engines here. We'll just go around them. They are rolling out hoses because the fire station's up on the hill. They're just unrolling. But you saw the driveway back there, how steep that was. Imagine getting a truck with containers on it going up that hill. It's not ideal, let's just say. So here we have the quarrying but it's cut to fill, still going on. So these edges will all have retaining walls on them. Who pays? Well, the industrial tenant or future landowner will pay, because through the site costs. These blocks are more expensive than they need to be because of this approach, because of the fire station existence. Anyway, I've had my rant, so we'll carry on. These sites are still filling up, albeit they've taken a very long time to fill up, but they still are, slowly but surely. Frio Cranes, they are a major supplier of heavy plant into the industrial area and other parts of Perth. They've only recently moved here. It's a pretty good spot actually for them. There are quite a few industrial companies that have moved into other industrial areas because of the price, as well as there's two main industrial areas, the Jandakot Airport and the Perth International Airport. They had a lot of land around them, federal land, and that land was much cheaper, and the town planning associated with that was much easier because it was federal land. So our planning system, sorry folks, is pretty complex if it's state land. Now that's the fourth. I'm referring to the fourth type of synergy, the governance synergy. We need to get our planning system much simpler than what it is. We need to get government departments talking properly to each other, and there's too much withholding of information, not sharing of plans. There is not and never has been a strategic plan for the development of the Western to guide the development of the Western Trade Coast. That's a problem. Now, look, cutting away directly ahead, the cranes, that's the waste to energy plant, and the power pylons above us, that is the pylon I pointed out to say where Ankertel Road joined Rockingham Road. This is that same intersection.